And Senator Bernie Moreno will introduce legislation expanding restrictions on Chinese vehicles in the U.S. market. Joining us now is automotive industry expert Lauren Fix at Car Coach Reports. Lauren, good afternoon. Always good to see you. How are you doing today?
Good to see you too, Don. Yeah, so this is a big story because it's not just the cars, it's also the parts and the software. And that's actually good for manufacturers here in North America, but it's also setting a huge tone. And President Trump's been talking about this, and now it looks like it's going to become a reality.
Right, we're talking about, you mentioned cars, hardware as well, partnerships in addition to all that. So, can I just ask you, how dependent actually is the US auto industry on Chinese components?
You would be surprised. It's quite dependent. A lot of the software on the center screens is developed in other countries, or it's developed here, and the components and the chips are made in other countries. That's why you're seeing companies like NVIDIA producing here. Qualcomm is also producing chips here in the US. The goal is obviously to have more components and parts made here. And how many times have you gone to a dealer to get repairs done on your vehicle and they can't get the part from the dealer, so they get it from an auto parts store? You don't know if it's made in China. You don't know if it what the quality level is. And as a consumer, you obviously want the safest components and parts for your car. So there's a big mix in not just repairs and maintenance, but also the sales side.
So, what really is the concern here about Chinese parts or Chinese software? Are we talking about data collection concerns? What is it?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, and that's part of what President Trump had said. Canada can go ahead and invite 49,000 cars to be sold in Canada, but those vehicles, so they claim, I don't know how they're going to do this, is going to say that when you try to cross the border into the US, you will not be allowed to. Now, I have heard people say you can buy a car in Mexico and drive it across the border, but you're not going to be able to register it and you're not going to be able to insure it. So remember that even if you own a Chinese car, that's going to be the big problem. The factor is that they collect a lot of data, not just off your phone, but other phones and communications around you through Bluetooth connections, through Wi-Fi connections. And they're also collecting data on your home, what's in your home, and wherever you go. And we have a lot of restrictions on that here in the US. And actually, it's funny that other countries have a lot of restrictions on privacy, like Germany does. But for some reason, they've allowed all these Chinese cars, all this Chinese technology, and it's hugely impacted the sales for their industry, for their jobs and their economy. And so you have to decide: are we in it for our people and to produce cars for our country, or are we supporting China? And it depends. Again, the past administration was all about supporting China. This administration is all about supporting U.S. jobs and our economy.
Okay, so this is a question perhaps many people are wondering. Do you think, by your analysis, would reducing reliance on Chinese components mean higher costs for cars, or is that the price we have to pay for security?
Well, I think it depends on the parts. Quality is more important, especially when you're talking about like braking components. I used to work in the braking industry, and I will tell you that obviously quality is most important because it's what stops your vehicle. You don't want something that's made in another country that may not be of that same quality level. The price may be less expensive, but are you willing to take that risk? And people aren't. And so we're not seeing that the software is less quality, but what we are realizing is that there is a price to pay for giving up your privacy. And part of what the plan is to obviously build the cars here. When you build the cars here, it might cost a little bit more, but we want a safe car. We want a car that's not in basically taking your private information and sending it who knows where in the world. So I think it'll also help build a lot of jobs here. So you're going to give you a lot of economic strength. There's a lot of companies that have been here in the US, and it doesn't just have to be cars. Think about all the components and parts of everything we buy every single day that are made in other countries. Those are jobs that are lost here, and that hugely impacts our economy.
So let me ask you this. You said these foreign cars could be collecting data and sending it to
Mhm.
somewhere in the world that we don't know.
Right.
What is the difference then? Because American made cars, they also collect data, right? So what is the difference between that data collection and what we're talking about here?
You are correct. I am totally against the data collection, the big data, where it collects your information, where you go, how fast you go. That's not just in your cars, but that's also on every single intersection. You've got these flock cameras and other branded cameras. I guess they're changing the names of some of these cameras because everyone kind of knows the name flock. But all this data collection, red light cameras and everything collects that data. Where does that data go? Well, the car manufacturers say that they keep it in order to improve the vehicle. But when you have data being collected by cities, states, and literally every vehicle. That data is sold either to the company, that robocall you get, hey, your extended warranty, or it could be sold to a government entity, it could be sold to an insurance company. This is where a lot of consumers have issues. Where does this go? This data can be sold to anybody. It could be sold to China, it could be sold to literally any country. So it's really important that we start thinking about, are you willing to give up all this information? And if so, where does that information go? And it's your information. And so that's a big factor that a lot of consumers have. And that's why President Trump is saying we don't want Chinese cars here. Bernie Moreno is saying the same thing. A lot of other representatives and congressmen are saying, hey, listen, we're going to put some controls here so that you're not just taking our information, giving us poor quality products, and being able to control our cars potentially remotely. That's a huge concern.
I mean, from what I've seen, the overall ban on Chinese vehicles in the US market has been rather successful, but would it be difficult? And how would you enforce a full ban on Chinese components?
Well, the full ban on Chinese components would be easier than banning cars. As components come in, whether they come by boat or by plane or however they get here, there's going to be, you have to go through customs and duty. And when they see it, if just like as if you had a knockoff of a Louis Vuitton bag, they're going to confiscate it and they're going to destroy it. So in this case, people would not order, manufacturers, suppliers would not be buying components from China. They'd probably buy them from other countries. I do expect that China will try to find a workaround, like sending it to, Vietnam, then sending it here, or sending it to Mexico and sending it here. That wouldn't surprise me because that's how they operate. But I will tell you, as I'm on the World Car of the Year jury, and we do get to drive Chinese cars. They do drive them across the border from Mexico with Mexico plates. So they are getting here to be test driven. I know that even Ford has some Chinese cars in their fleet that they use for testing vehicles, but those vehicles then depart our country and head back. So what data are they collecting? That is a good question, but I will tell you, driving them when you connect your phone, it is a really interesting experience how it immediately connects to your phone without you even saying, let's pair the phones. So this is a whole new level of collecting data.
Okay, so you're saying it's easier to ban Chinese components. So let's talk specifics here. Does that mean if we ban Chinese components, Tesla would not be able to use Chinese batteries? What is that going to do to Tesla?
That is a good question. I know that they do have a battery plant here in the U.S. I believe it's in Nevada, but they'll just have to build plant. They'll have to build product for here, here in our country. He does use Chinese batteries in other countries, and that's their government's regulations and what they choose to do. Someone like Tesla does use a lot of U.S. components. Remember, it is the number one built U.S. car where most of the components, more than any other car built here in North America, is Tesla. He uses more US parts. So while you might think he's like the number one criminal in this case, he isn't. He's actually the number one hero in this case. And other brands, you name it, whether it be domestic or an import brand that builds product here, has to get components here. And so actually that could be to their advantage. I just at the New York Auto Show this week, and I spoke to another brand that is a Chinese brand, and they said they're going to start building products here. So that's Polestar. Polestar had built product in China and in Vietnam, and now they also have a plant in South Carolina. So they're going to start building product here using components that are here in North America, and they said that'll help them control some of their costs. So this might be the next wave. And I think the only way that China is going to end up producing cars here in the US is literally by buying a brand like Stellantis, just purchasing the brand, purchasing the plants, and building it here, giving us jobs, which won't give them the financial advantage because the financial advantage is using low cost labor in other countries and then bringing it here. In this case, if you're using our labor, it's going to be UAW in most cases, and you're going to be using our components, or they're not going to be able to sell them here.
So Sean Marshall is actually at the New York Auto Show as well. Next time you can let us know if you're here in New York, and then we can do something in studio. But since we're talking about electric vehicles, let me just ask you one last question here. Gas prices going up, right? Averaging over $4 a gallon. What's your recommendation then, electric or gasoline right now? Last question.
All right, well, that's a really good question. A lot of people are thinking about electric cars. Remember, this is a very short window of time, as President Trump has said, and we only get 3% of our oil from the Strait of Hormuz. So where's the rest of it coming from? Right here in North America. And so why are the prices high? A lot of speculators have made it high. The distributors make it high. So once that gas station in your local corner runs out of fuel, it has to refill it. So it's not the fault of the gas station. It's not the fault of the distributor. It's where they're getting their oil from. And so right now they're speculating that they're going to get higher. We've seen this before where they've speculated high, trying to bring the prices high. I expect over the next few weeks, you're going to see the prices drop back down. So don't jump the gun and buy an electric car you're going to be stuck with for 3 years or more. If you want one, there's some fantastic products out there. But if you're thinking that's going to be my only option instead of gasoline, be patient and wait. There's also some wonderful hybrid product available out there, and there's also plug-in hybrids. So you can have the best of all worlds.
Okay, don't jump the gun and buy electric. Wise
Right.
words, Lauren. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.